Countdown. Good afternoon. This is Callum Burr from AI Ventures. Welcome to the Sydney Startup Show. Today with me, I have Ben from IBM. Ben, welcome.
Thank you, Callum. Thanks for having me.
Ben, and IBM, it's such a big brand, and I think we're so well aware of some of the amazing work you guys do in the AI front, particularly with Watson. Watson is such a huge AI brand. I think we're all kind of like always profoundly amazed at some of the amazing innovation that the company does. So we're so pleased and proud to have an IBM representative to be with us. And even more interesting, Ben, given your startup background, tell us a bit more about what you do at IBM.
Thanks, Callum. First of all, are we 1.5 meters apart? We might need to get the rule out on that one. So thanks again for having me. Really excited. First time joining you on the show. I've been a big fan. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in IBM land, first of all. I might start a few years back. As we know, IBM more than 100 years old, been around for quite some time, started with meat slicers and punch cards and moved into mainframes and personal computers, sold that business off to Lenovo a number of years ago, and then really centered around focusing on enterprise clients, so the largest businesses and organizations in the world. And really focusing on providing as a full comprehensive service to those organisations as possible. And what that really meant was becoming a full service, highly vertically integrated organisation, from everything from manufacturing the chips and the computers and the hardware, and as well as the software, the services, the installation, maintenance, management, and then the consulting services. And that really built out to management consulting services as well. So it was really about going deep with those large organizations around the world, big governments, large financial institutions, and really being able to service everything for those organizations. So that was really the strategy for decades, and a really successful one, of course. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a lot of shifts in the market and in the economy. For a number of reasons, the rapid pace of development with different technologies, including artificial intelligence, of course, and in fact, it's now 10 years since our Watson first debuted on Jeopardy, won Jeopardy. So can't believe it's been 10 years already. So we've seen this rapid evolution in the tech space, and with the divergence and convergence of different technologies, it's become very difficult as a business model to be able to stay on the cutting edge of that whole gamut of services and technologies. So we've seen that shift in the market. We've seen a number of different shifts, including from I guess from a growth perspective in terms of hiring new staff and investment. I was actually just reading the other day that by 2026, the S&P 20 in Australia, the average age of the organisation is going to be only 12 to 15 years. So you can see why a strategy around aligning closely to some of the largest and oldest businesses in the world, it's a limited strategy. So with some of all of these different forces, as I say, converging, obviously a big need to pivot and to change the strategy within IBM and a number of other organisations as well. But it's certainly something that we've been cognizant of. So over the last 5 or 10 years, we've really seen these forces developing, and we've been building our own strategy, certainly around technology and engagement. And we've really seen an opportunity in what we describe as the hybrid cloud market. I'll give you a definition in a second, but we've seen an opportunity growing here worth $1 trillion. So we've decided as an organisation that that's the market that we need to be focusing on. There's a lot of our strengths within that market. Artificial intelligence is a big piece of that as well. So we've seen everything that we've done over the past, certainly 5 years, has been around centering our organisation to really be able to capitalise on that opportunity. We've had some divestitures over the last 5 years as well. As I mentioned, we were highly vertically integrated, so we've decided to divest some of those business units that weren't necessarily core to winning in the hybrid cloud and AI battle. So there's been a number of those. The most recent of which only last year actually was the announcement of the spin-off of our managed infrastructure business, which was one of the major parts of our business for the last 20 years. Internally, we've called it GTS. So we've decided to spin off that organisation, which in its own right is going to be the largest managed infrastructure organisation in the world. So with spinning that off and the other market forces that I mentioned, we can see that we have a need to engage with the ecosystem. So there's been a lot of announcements at the start of the year around this strategy and this shift. Also, big news for the last couple of years, our acquisition of Red Hat, which some of your listeners may be aware of, is an open source organisation looking to engage with the community of developers and innovators to create solutions that make the world a better place, and certainly focusing on enterprise grade solutions. So in 2019, IBM acquired Red Hat for just a few dollars, $34 billion. So that's an open source organisation. So I think it's safe to say that IBM well and truly believes in the power of open source and the future of open source, and really engaging with the broader community of developers and technologists to be able to drive that strategy. So we've seen all of these different, as I say, forces and movements coming from IBM, and these have really been culminating. And as I say, this year, at the start of this year, Arvind Krishna, our new CEO, actually made some big announcements. And so it's great timing to be able to share that with you, because there's actually a lot of opportunity for startups, certainly in the Australian ecosystem, startups and ISVs and other organisations that have great innovative solutions. So really excited to be here and explain what's happening in that space. So should I tell you a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, startups, I mean, I think, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think, as an outsider, I think IBM is well and truly entrenched into the largest of the largest organizations. And perhaps my observations has been such that, there are certain industries, for example, where I think IBM has been a strategic partner, so much so that I think, it's almost like IBM runs the organization, at least all the digital transformation piece of that. But on the startup side, I mean, that's not something I've seen enough of, and maybe I may have biases to that, or but I'm very interested to understand more about the startup landscape.
Yeah, great question. And it's a question that I'm asked regularly. I go to a lot of startup events and conferences and engagements, and I love being in places like the Sydney Startup Hub, and I'm regularly asked the same question. IBM, what is IBM doing here in a startup location? You're focused on enterprise, and while that is true, certainly from a historical perspective, we've actually had a really well financed startup program for a number of years now. So what we're actually using that for is to find the next evolution of the technologies that serve our customers as well. So we obviously have a really strong footprint in the enterprise, government, enterprise. So we have a really strong incumbency. What we're looking for through our own startup program is organizations that serve the same customers, not necessarily competing against us in the same segments, but serving our customers. So if we're able to work together, then that's obviously beneficial for everyone. So on the link on the event page, I've actually dropped a couple of links, including the link to our startup program. You can actually get up to $120,000 US of IBM Cloud credits, including all the Watson services that we've been discussing as well. So great easy access. All you need to do is have an ABN, be less than 5 years old, your organisation less than 5 years old, and less than $1 million in revenue to get access to that startup program. So all of the great IBM services. So that's kind of the entry point for startups into the IBM ecosystem. You can get access to people like my team, great technologists and developers, and if we identify that there's you're doing some great things and serving the same kinds of customers as us, and sort of in the same world as us, so enterprise, B2B, what we describe as cognitive enterprise, which is essentially AI at scale for the enterprise, as opposed to sort of a B2C situation. Cybersecurity, those types of solutions and offerings. If we identify, and we do identify startups that are playing in that space, then we actually get more hands-on. And then a lot more value can be unlocked as well. So some of the announcements earlier this year made by Arvin included a $1 billion investment into the ecosystem because of the reasons that I mentioned earlier. IBM is now pivoting our business model, our engagement model, to be leveraging and relying on engaging the ecosystem. So that includes startups. And as I mentioned earlier, by 2026, the average age of the S&P 20 is 12 to 15 years, which means that right now they're startups. So that's why we need to be playing in this space. So as I mentioned, $1 billion investment overall into the ecosystem, including those startups. Some of the other benefits include an update in our partner world. So that's obviously the portal for startups and ISVs and ecosystem partners to be able to get access to. So there's lots of funding mechanisms, training, access to our go-to-market. We can also help to startups and ISVs to get access to our Red Hat marketplace, which is essentially a marketplace available to enterprise. So a large telco might have a catalog of solutions that they're approved to use internally. We can help ISVs and startups get onto those types of marketplaces. So that's a great piece of value as well. We also have what we call a cloud engagement fund, which is a very large fund to help organizations that we've identified a joint business case that needs serious investment. We can actually make that investment, including teams of people that can build the solution or integrate the solution. So lots of great reasons why startups and ISVs would want to be engaging with IBM at the moment. We're very open, we're very excited to be engaging with the broader ecosystem. So we'd love to hear from any of your listeners that are playing in that space as well.
So Ben, you talked about the $1 billion investment. I mean, that's a huge investment. How much of that is getting translated in Australia? I mean, we don't need to get into the specifics of numbers, but give us a sense of what's it like and how does some of that investment translating in Australia?
Obviously still quite early days, being that the start of the year the investment was made. But if we have a look at the market potential, in terms of health of ecosystem, Australia and New Zealand is actually the most healthy ecosystem across Asia Pacific and the fifth healthiest globally. So based on those types of stats, we expect to be co-delivering a lot of that investment in this region, certainly in Australia and New Zealand, keeping in mind that Australia does serve a lot of Asia Pacific as well. So there is a large network effect there, but there's so many great examples of organisations doing amazing things here in Australia. You're Atlassians and Afterpays and Canvas, and there's the list goes on, and that cohort of unicorns just grows every week as you well know. So really looking to engage with those organisations, the next generation. As I say, organisations that are really serving that client set as well.
In terms of the stages of startups, what's the best time to engage with IBM? Are these companies that haven't got an MVP yet, or in terms of the best engagement is to work with companies that are post MVP and looking to scale up? Where is the best value that your team can provide to Aussie startups?
I think there's a number of different ways that we can engage and add value. I mean, in the first instance, a conversation is simple. So even if a startup had an idea, so quite regularly I hear from developers or technologists that have worked in a large financial institution and they're looking to start to build their own startup, and they've got a great idea and they have the insights from inside those organizations and they really want to have investigate whether they can do something in that space. So I hear from those type of people all the time, and that makes a lot of sense to us because we've got a lot of strengths and networks and incumbency in that space. But we can certainly help all kinds of startups. So I would suggest reaching out and at least having a conversation. Hey, I've got this idea. What do you think about it? Just it's great to get as many different perspectives as possible. I'm every day contacted by startups, saying I've got this idea, just wanted to run it past you. Can you give me some frank advice? A couple of days ago, I heard from an organisation, from a startup, looking to essentially create a competitor to GoFundMe, as an example. So hear a lot about those types of startups, marketplaces and crowdsourcing sort of things. And my first question to them was, great, tell me about the market opportunity. What is the problem that you're solving here? And they couldn't really define what the problem was that they were solving. So I was asking questions. How did you land on it? How did you come up with this idea? What was the spark? And they kind of had the idea that simply by replicating an existing business model and cutting 0.5% off the cost, the fees to do it, that was a good strategy. And so there was some good learnings for that startup around maybe having another look at the opportunity, talk to some people that use these types of services and see if there's a gap. Are they happy with that service? Would they be even willing to look at something else? What would sort of dislodge them from that brand, or make them shop around? So those are questions that is value to any startup. So certainly happy to have a conversation in terms of moving to the next stage of getting hands on technical POCs and things like that. We can help to qualify that if it is something that could potentially be in the sweet spot of the IBM strategic direction. So serving the same types of customer sets, then we can start to unlock some of that capital, hands-on workers and people as well.
So you talked about the sweet spot. Everybody's got their little sweet spot. And I guess those from the outside the industry, they may not be as aware of what different sweet spots are, with IBM and others that may be playing in the same space or in a similar space, or it may look the same, but everybody has a sweet spot. What do you believe is your sweet spot?
I think a good way to explain it is to talk a little bit about our cloud strategy moving forward. But by the way, I do still hear from people that are surprised and sort of say, "Oh, is IBM a cloud player?" There's a lot of confusion around that, and I think a lot of that, certainly in the startup space, comes from the fact that we do serve enterprise clients. A lot of our communication strategy is around communicating with enterprise clients. So I think that sometimes that message doesn't get through to the startup community, but I think that we're going to see a big change around that. Certainly, that's why I'm here now. But if we have a look at our cloud strategy, it's really around building an ecosystem to service regulated industries. So we've built a financial services cloud as an example. We've got a telco cloud, and there are a number of others that we're rolling out. And what that really means, if I could use the analogy of the Apple ecosystem. So I've got an iPhone here. So I'm a father of 4 small children, right? We've got about 20 odd Apple devices in the house. And the reason that I chose that ecosystem is because each of the kids want to be accessing apps. They want to be downloading apps. They want to be, looking at YouTube and all of the different things that they want to do. I don't have time to be going and, being a network administrator and checking on all of the different pieces of security and what they're doing, their screen time, all of those different things. So by being in the Apple ecosystem, we're able to share data, we're able to share storage. I'm able to manage and monitor the activity, including their screen time. So that's really Apple is a platform. It's an ecosystem. It has all the rules built in. It's a single pane of glass, and it's easy for the user to use and get value out of without spending all of their time working on the technical stuff. I don't want to be integrating IFTT for all my smart devices, etc. It just all happens as part of the ecosystem. That same type of ideology is what we're rolling out with our industry clouds. So based on the Red Hat Openshift platform, and this is really one of the key reasons that we acquired Red Hat. Openshift is a platform which it's really an end-to-end platform built on Kubernetes, which includes everything from a development platform. It's an infrastructure hosting platform. It's got cybersecurity built into it. It's great for DevOps and building innovative things. It's everything. It's an end-to-end platform. Based on OpenShift, we've actually been able to build a cloud offering for, take financial services as an example, where it's already automatically integrated into all of the different environments. So all of the major clouds, there's integrations built in. On-premise, private cloud, edge devices, everything that industry needs. And there's a layer of security and compliance, which has actually been pre-built using APRA regulations. So we know from engagements with large financial institutions that it can take up to 18, 24 months of engaging just to make sure that APRA's happy with the compliance, that the client's happy. We've done all that work and baked it into the platform. So what we're looking now is to invite other organizations, startups, ISVs, even the Adobes and Salesforces of this world to join this ecosystem. That way everyone is assured of that risk and compliance end to end. So when I talk about sweet spot, we're looking for organizations that can be part of that ecosystem.
You also mentioned that you mentioned financial services a number of times. That clearly sounds like a sweet spot. Are there other sweet spots in terms of industries or the types of customers where IBM is significantly differentiated in the marketplace?
We've always been obviously well incumbent in government, so that's a really strong space for us. Everything from federal government, state to local governments as well. So we play really strongly there. I think it's because we're a trusted brand. We're a safe set of hands. We've got great skills across the board. So that's another place that we've got great incumbency in. We're also really excited about industrials, so manufacturing, retail, increasingly into energy and utilities as well. So really excited about working with the government and organisations around smart renewables as well. We're engaging heavily around the Asia link, so exporting energy through solar farms and battery energy. So really excited about being in that space as well, and increasingly around sustainability. So sustainable farming, sustainable agriculture, and green tech and energy, as I mentioned. So those are the areas that we're sort of looking to build in, and you can see that there's a lot of crossover between government financial services, which is becoming a lot more open now as well. Open banking, APIs, being able to play a part across those ecosystems as well.
And Ben, earlier you talked about a couple of industries or areas where IBM has divested. I mean, you talked about the infrastructure business. Are there specific industries where there is not a good fit? Industries or types of customers or types of areas where there isn't a good fit anymore?
I wouldn't say in particular, other than B2C. So we're not really focused on B2C. It's not to say that startups and ISVs can't use our technology to be in that space. As an example, Watson Assistant, which is our virtual assistant, is the best chatbot on the market. It's not only that has the best capabilities and the best AI capabilities, but it's also the easiest to use. In fact, the latest iteration, you can literally put the URL of your website into Watson Assistant. Really simple. It reads your site and creates content around that. So almost out of the box with only a few clicks, you've got this virtual assistant that understands your business, understands the context, and can start to actually help your clients and visitors to understand what your business is about and to help them navigate the questions that they have.
Wow, I mean, I think we'll give it a try myself, or somebody in our team later today. So that'll be really fun. In terms of working with the local startup ecosystems, how are you going about that? I mean, points of presence. We don't see yet enough of IBM, but presumably, I think from what you're saying, with that massive investment, we'll see a lot more IBM across, at least certainly in places like Sydney Startup Hub. What are some of the plans that you can share? Obviously, there may be things that you can't share, but what are the things you can share on air?
I think so. We want to have a presence across a number of different groups. There isn't really too many associations or startup groups that focus specifically on enterprise, and so it can be quite broad. So it makes sense for us to be present and to run workshops and competitions and engagements right across the board, because we're really looking for those next superstars, certainly in the AI space and servicing enterprise the enterprise clients. So you will see a lot more this year, including Call for Code, which you would have seen last year. So we're actually in year 5 of Call for Code, being the largest tech for good initiative globally. Last year we had nearly 500,000 developers and technologists from around the world compete, and it's really about using innovation and technology to tackle some of the largest challenges facing the planet. Climate change, obviously last year COVID, disaster resiliency, and this year we're really looking to evolve that further. So there's lots of great prizes, hands-on skills, press. We actually managed to get 3 of the top 10 solutions globally last year from Australia. So we know that we've got such an amazing community here. So those are some of the types of activities that we'll be engaging with the startup communities to be identifying the top talent to really look to work with. We're also working with our clients to identify gaps, identify opportunities that they want people to start solving for. So we'd love to start identifying some top teams in the startup ecosystem to really start to collaborate and work together to solve problems together.
On that, what are some of the top trends you're seeing that are coming up, I guess, in the last 3 months, or I guess just coming up at the back of, everything that's happening in the last 6 to 8 months? There's been obviously a lot of changes in the digital transformation space across the industries that you serve. What are some of the top trends or things that, maybe early stage startup founders are thinking about solving? What could be some of those things, or startup founders that could probably use the information you share to maybe pivot or start getting themselves to think about the opportunities a bit bigger?
I think from a general perspective, AI as a topic is now starting to really build momentum and starting to mature a lot. And I think we're sort of starting to see organizations wanting to go from that basic kind of Q&A chatbot type scenario to actually start to build that out and start to really get access to data right across their organization, to the edge devices, to weather data, and really start to overlay those and start to really start to add value to the client experience. So I really think that we're starting to see a maturation in that cycle. So there's definitely some opportunity there. Going deep in industry verticals. So industry knowledge, as I mentioned before, we quite often hear from people within industry that can see the opportunity because they hear from internally and from customers all the time, I wish that I could get this, or this isn't quite meeting my needs, or I wish, can you do this? So really identifying, being proactive and identifying, being responsive to those types of questions. So I think for a startup looking for opportunities, if they don't have deep industry or subject matter expertise, I would be looking to do some research. My number one advice to startup founders all the time is to spend your first dollar and your first hour on research. So you might have a great idea, test that idea, and we hear that from mentors all the time, of course, but it is the number one advice. Test your idea, do research. Is that a problem that needs solving? If it's not, then find one, because there's heaps of problems out there. So speak to people in a particular industry that you're looking to serve, a particular problem space. Find some ideal users, and really get close to what to the emotion that user's feeling.
Earlier on, you mentioned that one of the massive advantage that startups get in collaborating and partnering with IBM is access to markets, both domestically into certain industries, in B2B, in enterprises, as well as a global company as well. IBM is everywhere around the world. Where do you see, how do you see the Australian market different to that internationally? Where do you spend most of your efforts and time and energy? Is it more helping domestic startups in establishing themselves domestically across in the industries, or do you see more opportunities at this point where startups are now looking to scale internationally? And I think the strategic partnership with IBM could, help them to be established in even more sense.
Yeah, look, I think when a startup is looking to build relationships, certainly with a large tech vendor, you do need to be mindful of, is it the right partnership? So quite often we hear from organisations, from startups that do see us as a good natural fit. They could be a fintech, to go back to the financial services, or or they could be someone in the a strong example is in the call recording and transcription space. using the Watson capabilities. That we're working with a company called Dubber at the moment, which is a call recording and transcription service, and they add sentiment, tone analysis, etc. A lot of smart capabilities, and they're able to help to escalate any issues really quickly. So it helps to improve the customer experience. So those types of startups do tend to come to us a lot. We speak with a lot of those types of startups, but it really is about the market that you're wanting to get into, the customer set that you're looking to. If it was a retail type situation, then you might partner with a particular vendor. But we tend to see a lot of startups that come to us because it makes sense.
Do you have any examples of a hero customer or a hero startup that you've had a chance to see massive successes at the back of that partnership?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dubber is certainly a growing example of that. Where we're helping them do a global deal right now. So in the telcos in the States, as an example. So that's a great example of a great success story. A number of others that we've been working with over the past 6 months include LTI, which is an insurance solution, so helping to infuse AI into their solutions as well. There's a supply chain solution called Pearl Chain, which we're helping to build out into global supply chains as well. And there's a number of others as well, LifeRay, and there's a number of others. So helping with global expansion absolutely through our network of partnerships, through our network of distributors as well. So there's lots of ways that we can help organisations go global. I would say though, a number of startups do tend to look globally very, very early in the piece, and I quite often think that it's good to being from this market and understanding this market. It's actually good to at least hone your skills on identifying niches and problem statements in your local market, and then being able to use those skills and experience of really going deep on that problem statement to then start to look to other markets, because every market has its different dynamics. So I tend to at least caution startups to not straight away think global, straight away we're going to Silicon Valley now. Of course, it makes sense for a lot of startups, but I do often caution that go deep on a niche, on a problem statement here locally where your expertise is, where your network is, and then use that skill and that experience, that confidence that you've built up to be able to tackle other markets.
So let me hand over to our executive production team and see if there are any questions that are coming out from the floor.
So the IBM is a good example for the startups as an example of how not to give up, because in the early 90s it was nearly bankrupted. So historically what happened, and how did IBM manage to stay on the line?
Great question, and as I mentioned, IBM has pivoted, has evolved a number of different times from the meat slices to the punch cards to the mainframes, and I think it really is about identifying your strengths and identifying your incumbency and looking to leverage that. There has been a number of times that we've reinvented ourselves, and this is actually one of the most exciting times actually. So it really is about understanding your customers, understanding your strengths, making sure that they're aligned, and anything that isn't aligned, then it's time to focus on your strengths. So very, very, very similar example in the 90s. We weren't on the right path at the time. So we pivoted, and then we shifted towards a lot more services. Was back in the 90s, and now we're pivoting again to be laser focused on the hybrid cloud and AI market. So we are. When someone asks me now, what does IBM do? What is IBM? We're a hybrid cloud and AI company.
So I guess one of the questions I'm curious about is, what does success look like for you and your team in the startup space in the next 12 months or maybe in the next couple of years?
We're looking to onboard or to welcome into our family 300 successful, what we describe as ISVs over the next 12 to 24 months. So that's what success looks like in terms of a number.
Awesome. With that, that's all the time we have for the show. Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. And I've got some great IBM shirts and swag for you and the team. Any of your listeners that would like any, please reach out and let's connect.
Absolutely, man. This is my happy day today. So, and I can tell you the whole team is super excited about the t-shirts.
Fantastic.
Ben, thank you again.
Thanks, Colin.